Hey everybody, I'm Yvonne Williams with Back to Earth Creations, and in this video I want to show y'all how to make these elvish style bracers. They're very beginner friendly. We're going to start out with around an 8-ounce leather. You could use thinner, but I find a thickness like this is great for both LARP and cosplay purposes, but isn't so thick that it's unmanageable or extraordinarily expensive. So we're going to go through with our ring divider. You could use whatever tools you have on hand, honestly. And it's set to about 1 inch, and I'm just doing a little barrier onto each side. And then I'm using just the thickness of my ruler to line up with the edge and using an awl to just scratch the leather of the surface of the leather, rather. Being very careful to not kind of go out of lines, and you can see we're doing this little herringbone pattern. To me it was very like Lord of the Rings, and we're going to do that all the way down to the tip. I'm not being particularly careful about where the center line is for this. I just kind of wanted to get it knocked out, because once you have it curved around, you can't really tell where the center should have been anyhow. So that's how it came out. And now here I'm showing you an example of one that's been tooled already, but it does not have that edge border. So I can't emphasize enough how much, do whatever you feel like doing with your leather. Like, there's no right or wrong way to do it. Even if you're consistent and have it symmetrical, then it'll look on purpose. So we've sprayed down our leather, and I'm coming through with a ceramic bladed swivel knife and just cutting carefully along those lines. Now be sure that you've stropped your blade nicely, that way it'll cut through the leather without dragging. And I like to have my leather damp, but not so soggy that it might like stretch or distort. But a lot of that can depend on the side that you're working with too. And I start from in the center where it's going to be very visible and then pull towards the edge, because worst case scenario, that's going to be like kind of the concealed part of the bracer, and that is the part that I do last, because if I overcut, I can always just extend it a little further and make it look like it was supposed to be that way. Now here I'm going through with a textured beveler foot. You can see how one side is a little bit deeper than the other. I'm going to line the deep side up with the cut that we've made, and then I'm just tapping along it. You can see I'm stabilizing with my pinky there, and as I hammer, I'm moving that, I'm walking the tool along so that it leaves this nice indent into the leather. It's called leather carving, but that makes it sound like you're removing material, but you can see we're actually just compressing the leather fibers that are there. So here you can see in like super fast forward, I wish I could tool that fast, just kind of going along, tapping. And you could use a variety of different tools and stuff. I really like the bevel tools because it makes it look like they're one woven under the other. And if your work's looking a little choppy, don't hesitate to go back over it and kind of smooth it back out. I really like this texture foot because it gives like I don't know, there is a smooth beveler, but I like the texture foot, especially since later we'll be staining with an antique gel, and it kind of settles into all of those little grooves and everything that the texture foot leaves. And so there we go, we just tool all of our lines. And now you can see with this pair that I had done, this was like my practice pair, I have them mirror imaged of each other. And so to accomplish that, we're going to go through just like how we did before and wing divide the edges. Also, I didn't show it in this video. I thought I'd gotten footage of it, but I hadn't. I had already gone through with an edge beveler and kind of shaped the edges of the leather down. That way they're curved a little bit. I do demonstrate that in other videos, as do many other, very talented leather crafting YouTubers. So again, I just, be mindful of if you want it mirror imaged. Now here you can see we have both of them tooled and everything, and I had messed up a bit. And you can kind of see, it's not perfectly straight, like my swivel knife kind of, went off the beaten path. And it's very subtle, but it's there. And as the artisan, I know it's there, and that kind of bugs me. And I think, and I'm not even like a meticulously tidy person or anything, but honestly, don't worry about it, because you can see now that it's curved around, it really is very difficult. Like, someone would have to be holding a ruler up to your work and being like, tisk tisk, you know. So don't sweat the little stuff. So now we're going through with EcoFlow Gel Antique. You could use a variety of different dyes and stuff, but I feel like this really helps those details that we've tooled in to have a really nice contrast. And I just glob a bunch of it into my gloved hand. I'd always rather use a little bit too much than not enough, because the extra, and you can see I'm having fun just splatting it on the front, but any extra we can move around to the back. That I do like to wet first. You'll notice the front I let be almost completely dry, because dyes and antique gels will absorb into leather differently whenever the leather is wet and dry. Whenever I want a lot of contrast, I'll put it onto the leather while it's dry. And now you can see, just using a pad of paper towel and, spritzed with some water, it really removes that gel. And every time that the pad gets dirty enough that it's just smearing around the product, I'll refold it to a clean spot. And if you miss any, edges or anything, I just get a bit under my gloved finger and rub it along. There are products out on the market that are like edge stains and stuff. I haven't really found that those are necessary. They're nice, don't get me wrong, but I haven't found in my own work for them to be very necessary. Give it a last final buff in, and then we're going to let this dry a little bit. Now the antique gels are pretty waxy, but it gives them a really nice finish, but it does also repel other dyes. So if I wanted to have some subtle coloring underneath this, I would have done that like with just a regular water stain first. But if you want to add something afterwards, and I'm demonstrating like you can read on the label. It's a Fibings black oil dye. This stuff is intense, so it only takes just a little bit, and it penetrates and overwhelms any other colors that I put it over. So I'm using just a flat like chisel, paintbrush, and just applying it there on those edges just to make a nice contrast. And real careful to not leave like big black oily fingerprints or like smudges on the back or anything like that. Like I want to be, even though it does not come naturally to me, I'm trying really hard to be like careful here. And we're gonna do that to both sides and then let that dry completely before doing any other work on it, just to make sure that we don't leave any fingerprints. Now, also, something that I did do to this project but didn't get film of is slicking the edges and rubbing down a finish of satin sheen, which we can talk more about, finishing edges and stuff in other videos. Here I'm coming through with a 1/4 inch hole punch and prepping the holes for our eyelets. You could, if you like measuring stuff and having them be all nice and in line and even, totally do that, but I didn't. Because I am a bad person. Now we have an eyelet setter, and these are the 1/4 inch eyelets that I get from Tandy Leather. Be sure that you have the right setter for the eyelet size that you're using, and we just nestle it down into the setter and then use the little pestle part and whack it a bunch, and there we are. And then you do that. I think I used 20 eyelets for this project. It goes by pretty quickly, but they make a big difference. They protect the leather from, like rope burn and stretching and stuff over time. Speaking of stretching, I used to use paracord for lacing up all of my work, but I really love this shock cord. It's like a high tension shock cord that you would use. I had bought a bunch of it for like tent stake, like the tent poles for tents to like string through, but it works great for just about everything that I found. And I cut my own aglets from this heat shrink tubing, and you could use a heat gun or a lighter, and that just keeps the end from unraveling. It does get hot though. And I always finish the end that is still attached to the spool, just to for next time. And then once that's cooled down and everything's edge slicked and finished and the dye is ready, I'm just going to lace it up the same way that I would like a boot. And I find that this fits most people, but for these bracers, since I am making them for sale out of my booth, so they're kind of a generic one size fits everybody size. If someone has a particularly petite wrist, like, or they're, a young person, I'll go through and I'll lace this way, kind of coming through one side and then through the other. like through the front and then the back, and then coming up through the back and then the front. And this way it's going to train the lacing to where they just completely overlap each other, and that actually shrinks it by like almost an inch or two. So that's how I get it to fit you know, the little ones, the children and stuff that come through who want to be in full armor. And the other strand just is right up the inside of the wrist there. It's not particularly uncomfortable, but it is an alternative, and you can lace them however you like. So I do hope that this video was helpful to you guys. If you have any questions, comments, or ideas, please leave them down below. If you enjoy my videos, please consider joining me over on Patreon, where we do all different sorts of behind the scenes updates, digital download templates, and our monthly craft-a-line kits, just all sorts of stuff. So until next time, guys, thanks for watching and happy crafting. Bye.